Watson. It's going to be white. There you go.
It's light work, period.
Roll Tide and welcome to Tide TV This Week. I'm Roger Hoover, joined by Kira Goldstein. As Kira, we're still right in the middle of basketball season. We got spring sports around the corner, but also when we look back to the fall, so many great reasons to talk about Alabama football.
Yeah, I feel like we got to talk about them because the awards continue to roll in for the Crimson Tide.
You know, quarterback Bryce Young set the Alabama record for most passing yards and touchdowns in a season. Young was named the first quarterback to ever win the Heisman Trophy in Crimson Tide history.
And along with being named the SEC Offensive Player of the Year, Young also won the Maxwell Award, which recognizes football's top player, and the Davey O'Brien Award, which is given to the nation's top quarterback, as well as numerous other honors and awards.
And on Tuesday, the Sugar Bowl and the Manning family announced that Bryce Young was their winner of the 2021 Manning Award given to the nation's top quarterback. Young becomes the program's second straight winner of the Manning Award, joining last year's recipient, Mac Jones. The pair are the only two Alabama quarterbacks to take home the Manning Award in the award's 18-year history.
Also announced this week, Dallas Turner was named a Football Writers Association of America Freshman All-American. Turner finished his first season with the Crimson Tide with 30 total tackles, including 10 for loss and 8.5 sacks. Turner was also selected as a Freshman All-American by 24/7 Sports following the conclusion of the regular season. He also earned Freshman All-SEC accolades from the conference coaches. Congratulations to Bryce and Dallas on their great seasons.
Yeah, what a season it was for the Crimson Tide. SEC champions and the Crimson Tide made it all the way to the national championship game. The Tide achieved that despite losing 10 players to last year's NFL draft, including a record-tying 6 in the first round.
Yeah, an amazing 106 Alabama players have been drafted since 2009, and this past week, 11 players announced that they hope to add their names to that total as they declared their intentions to enter the 2022 NFL Draft. Among those announcing their intentions to enter the draft were 4 on offense and 4 on defense. From the offensive side of the ball, the players who declared were wide receivers Jamison Williams, John Mechie, and Slade Bolden, along with offensive lineman Evan Neal.
On defense, linebackers Chris Allen and Christian Harris, along with defensive backs Jalen Armour-Davis and Josh Joe, will enter the draft. The 2022 NFL Draft will take place April 28th through the 30th in Las Vegas.
The Crimson Tide currently have 68 players in the NFL, and this past weekend, 31 were represented on teams in Wild Card Weekend. This brings us to our special Wild Card edition of NFL Players of the Week.
And we start with the running back for the Las Vegas Raiders, Josh Jacobs. He finished with 127 all-purpose yards in the Raiders' matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals. Jacobs had 83 yards rushing on just 13 attempts, while catching 4 passes for 144 yards.
Amari Cooper of the Dallas Cowboys had the only touchdown reception among former Crimson Tide players in Wild Card Weekend. Coop finished with 6 receptions for 64 yards to go along with a 20-yard touchdown catch.
And with Buffalo leading New England 27-3, Levi Wallace intercepted former Crimson Tide quarterback Mac Jones on the Patriots' first drive of the second half. It was the 3rd interception of the season for Wallace. Those are Crimson Tide and the NFL Players of the Week.
Good luck to all of our former Alabama players playing in the divisional round of the NFL playoffs this weekend. You know, Roger, Alabama is known for being a championship school, and this past weekend, the University of Alabama added another championship to their record.
We're certainly excited, Kira. The University of Alabama all-girl cheer squad won the 2022 UCA Division 1A National Championship this past Sunday night in Orlando. This was the Tide's 3rd all-girl national title and 1st since 2015. Our co-ed team also finished 2nd, while the dance team had a 6th place finish at Nationals. So congratulations to the Crimson Tide cheerleading squad, national champs.
You know, it never gets old saying that, Roger, national champs. But what else do you expect from a championship school?
Well, stay with us. We have some big performances from the Alabama swimming and diving team, men's tennis team, and track and field.
But next, we'll check in with the Alabama men's basketball team as the Tide hosted 13th ranked LSU inside Coleman Coliseum on Wednesday night.
Tide TV This Week is presented by the University of Alabama, where legends are made. Ford, for great offers on F-150, see your local Ford dealer. Proud sponsor of the Crimson Tide.
It's a done deal. 995. It's in. Alabama, the 2021 SEC champions.
I'm so proud of them. They have worked so hard. They have been fighters.
Welcome back to Tide TV This Week. The Alabama men's basketball team had some great wins on their resume this season already. Tide has defeated, of course, #1 Gonzaga and 10th-ranked Houston.
Alabama has also defeated then 14th-ranked Tennessee and Florida on the road in Gainesville. But after those consecutive wins over the Vols and Gators, the Tide have dropped 3 straight contests.
Coach Oates' squad looked to get back in the win column on Wednesday night as Alabama hosted 13th-ranked LSU, and the Tide did just that. It's, of course, a back-and-forth battle throughout most of the game with 15 lead changes and 5 scores that were tied. Alabama led by 1 at the half, 33-32. Crimson Tide used a big 18-4 run in the second half to jump out to a 13-point lead at 57-44. Now LSU fought back, with the Tide missing some key free throws and shots from the floor down the stretch. The Tigers were able to get back into the game, but Alabama held on at home for their 5th consecutive win over LSU as the Tide upset the 13th-ranked Tigers 70-67.
The Crimson Tide had 3 score in double figures as Jaden Shackelford led the Tide and tied for the game high with 26. Javon Quinterly added 17 and Keon Ellis chipped in 12 points and 8 rebounds.
Big win. I mean, we needed to get back on the winning streak. 3 losses in a row was enough. We didn't play particularly well, especially on the offensive end. We didn't make shots, roll 15 from 3 in the second half, and couldn't make free throws late. But our guys fought and battled, and got to give a ton of credit to our guys just figuring out a way to get a win when it wasn't your best game on the offensive end. So, you know, I liked where our attitude was. I thought we played a lot harder. I think if we get that effort, shots start dropping like we know they're capable of, I think we can get this thing back to where we had it middle of December.
Big win at just the right time for the Crimson Tide to end the 3-game losing streak.
Yeah, that win improves Alabama's record to 12-6 overall and 3-3 in SEC play.
Let's take an inside look at the Tide's big win over 13th-ranked LSU. This all-access highlight brought to you by ATI.
Kind of a must-win feel to this one. The LSU Tigers come in. The Alabama Crimson Tide host again.
It's wartime. It's wartime. Guess what, though? It's all we need.
Quinterly, there you go. He laid it up and in.
4, deep 3, bottom. Alabama takes the lead. 15-14 in the quarter. Miles, 3, bottom.
Quinterly, that was contested, and he buried it.
Finds Ellis, right corner, 3, bottom.
Shackelford, deep 3. Got it! Quinterly, pretty play. Watch out. Alley-oop. Davison, he finds Gurley.
Kind of got back to being us. Like, just some gritty, tough, hard-nosed, like, it was not a pretty game, okay? But, like, try to get your swagger back, though. You learn how to win.
Tide TV This Week is presented by the University of Alabama, where legends are made. Ford, for great offers on F-150, see your local Ford dealer. Proud sponsor of the Crimson Tide.
And the Alabama Crimson Tide.
Alabama is really playing with max effort.
I can't shoot no brick. 9:30 in the morning. Hustle like I ain't getting no portion. While you was dormant, let you sleep since that's so important. Practice my form, I done broke out of the no.
Hannah Barber.
To the bench.
Taylor shot.
Welcome back to Tide TV This Week. I'm Roger Hoover, joined by my co-host Kira Goldstein.
Roger, the Alabama women's basketball team has won 4 out of the last 5 contests. And the last game against Florida this Sunday was a matchup in Coleman Coliseum that included their second game in a row. The Tide has also been tough to beat at home with a 9-2 record in Coleman Coliseum prior to the tip-off with the Gators.
You know, Florida took the opening period as the Gators led by 17-16 after the first 10 minutes of play. However, Alabama battled back and took a 2-point lead at the half, 29-27. And a high-scoring third period, the Tide outscored the Gators by 1 to take a 58-55 lead going into the final 10 minutes of play. It was Megan Abrams leading the way for the Crimson Tide in that third period with 10 points, while Jemiah Mingo Young and Kyla Wade Warren each added 7.
The Crimson Tide jumped out to their largest lead of the game at 9 points early in the fourth on this three-pointer by Brittany Davis, but from there, Florida outshot Alabama as the Gators outscored the Tide 30-19 in the final 10 minutes of action to come from behind and hand the Tide their third home loss of the season, 85-77.
Yeah, Megan Abrams led the Tide with 22 points, while Brittany Davis had her fourth double of the season with 19 points and 10 rebounds. Jemiah Mingo-Young also tacked on 18 points of her own.
The Alabama gymnastics team opened SEC competition on the road this past weekend as the 11th-ranked Tide traveled to Gainesville to take on the second-ranked Florida Gators on ABC. The meet was the first regular season collegiate gymnastics meet to air on a national broadcast network.
Alabama opened with a 49-350 on the uneven bars, led by a pair of 9.925s from Luisa Blanco and Makari Doggett. In the second rotation, the Crimson Tide bettered its vault total from week 1 by more than 0.2 of a point, scoring a 49-175, led by Makari Doggett's 9.875. Lexi Graber's 9.925 in the anchor position helped Alabama improve its floor exercise score from its opening meet by more than 3/4 of a point with a 49-300.
The Tide finished off the meet with a 49-150 on the balance beam, led by Blanco's 9.95. The Tide was in the lead late in the meet's final rotation before the Gators came up with back-to-back 10s for their last two routines to secure the victory. Alabama came within less than 1/10 of a point from knocking off number 2 Florida in Gainesville as the Gators came from behind to win 197-196-925.
It was a tough loss for the Tide, so close to knocking off the second-ranked team in the nation on their own home floor. With that performance, though, Alabama moves up a spot in this week's rankings to number 10.
The Alabama swimming and diving and men's tennis teams had some big performances this past weekend. We'll tell you all about those when we come back.
I love how they have no fear. Man, it's all of them. Everybody's chasing Alabama.
Come on now! Alabama raining down the threes.
The buzzer sounds. Alabama hangs on. Oh my goodness!
We don't have to be a football score or basketball score. We just win championship.
The job's not finished. We're not done yet.
Welcome back. The Alabama swimming and diving team closed the dual meet portion of their schedule this past Saturday as the Crimson Tide hosted in-state rival Auburn.
The Crimson Tide will honor the 18 swimmers and divers who are in their senior season prior to the start of the meet. Of those 18 seniors, 8 were from the men's team, with 10 being from the women's team.
Great way to finish senior day as the Crimson Tide's women's team earned a 161-139 win over the 19th-ranked Tigers, winning 13 of 16 events. The men dropped a narrow 152-148 decision. Let's take an all-access look at the highlights from the Tide's senior day match against Auburn. The Alabama men's tennis team opened the 2022 season with a couple of wins. In a doubleheader on Saturday, the Crimson Tide opened their dual match season with a 6-1 win over Mercer.
In match 2 against the Samford Bulldogs, the Tide used a come-from-behind win in the final 2 matches against the Bulldogs to take a 5-2 victory for the sweep. It was the 5th consecutive year that Alabama has swept its opening day doubleheader and the 8th time in 9 years. Alabama will host Oklahoma State this Saturday as the team closes out a 3-game homestand to start the season. The match will start at 6 p.m. at the Roberta Allison Bumgardner Tennis Facility.
You know, the Alabama softball team opened spring practice on Sunday. Due to cold and rainy weather, the Crimson Tide opened spring practice indoors. Alabama finished last season 52-9. This season, the Crimson Tide began the season ranked 2nd in the nation.
Alabama finished last season 52-9, and this season the Crimson Tide begin the season ranked 2nd in the nation, just behind the Oklahoma Sooners. In all, 8 SEC teams are in the top 20.
Let's go all access with the Alabama softball team as they opened spring practice indoors this past Sunday.
Complete buy-in from every person in the circle, okay? That's literally all we're asking for, and just give all you've got.
Welcome back to Tide TV This Week as we take a look at our Players of the Week brought to you by Legacy of Hope. And this week we have selected several SEC athletes for our Crimson Tide Players of the Week.
Well, we start with track and field's Bobby Colantonio Jr. as he came away with a toss of 24.15 meters in the weight throw at the Blazer Invitational, shattering his own Alabama school record and landing in the number 7 spot on the all-time collegiate top 10. His mark is number 1 in the world and leads the nation this season by more than a meter. On the season, he has 3 of the top 5 throws in the nation. Colantonio was named the SEC Men's Field Athlete of the Week.
The Alabama swimming and diving team earned a trio of honors from the Southeastern Conference this week, including Ryan White, who was the Women's Co-Swimmer of the Week. White was the 2021 World Champion in the 200-meter backstroke and led Alabama to a decisive win over Auburn, winning all 4 events she entered. White picked up wins in the 100 and 200 backstroke events, the 100 butterfly, and led off the 200 medley relay win for the Crimson Tide.
And from the men's team, Derek Moss won every meet he competed in. He won 3 individual events against Auburn as he swept the 100 and 200 breaststroke events. Moss also took the top spot in the 200 individual medley and was also part of the first place 200 medley relay team. Moss was named the SEC Male Swimmer of the Week.
And Avery Weissman was chosen as the SEC Women's Freshman Swimmer of the Week. Weissman won both breaststroke events she swam in and finished 4th in the 200 individual medley. Weissman was also part of the Tide's 200 medley relay title. And those are our Legacy of Hope Players of the Week. Another really great week, Roger.
And we're expecting a lot more here coming up next week as Alabama basketball continues rolling. And again, we're getting closer to more and more spring sports. We'll see you next week, everybody. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
This has been a presentation from Learfield,